One way to provide feedback to your students is to record audio, and D2L has that option if you're using a submission folder. Word of warning though, the only way you can use the record audio is if you actually have submission folders and not through the grades area here. So let's see how this works. I'll go to one of my submission folders and look and see what student has turned information in. And then I'll go ahead and click either add feedback, or I've already created feedback here. That's why it says published. So just look for the clickable feedback related link here. So I'll click this. And as you can see for this particular student, I've already given them a score and typed some text. So this is just an example site, so this doesn't actually make sense. So you can see when you're in that submission folder, there's a record audio button. So if you'd rather provide it verbally instead of typing, then you can do that here. You do have to change a bunch of settings the first time you do this, but after you change those settings, unless you clear out your browser, they shouldn't have to be set again. So I'll click record audio. And the first time I come in here, I see this note that I need version 10.1 of Adobe Flash Player. Depending on when you're watching this, it might have a later version, so just be aware of that. So in order to get the Adobe Flash Player, I Google searched Adobe Flash Player download, and it's usually at get.adobe.com/Flash Player. So you can download it and install it. If you're on a computer that is at MCC, then make sure that you contact IT department to do this for you. Now here's a warning that says you might have the latest version, which I actually do, and it just might be disabled, and that's why it's not working. So in order to enable it in the browser, for right now I'm using Google Chrome. I believe it's the best browser. So if you're using Google Chrome, follow along with me. If you're not using Google Chrome, then you're going to have to search for the settings in your particular browser. So we need to make sure that Flash is enabled in this browser. So we'll click this little lock icon to the left of the URL and go down here to site settings. So now in the site settings section, it says Flash and it says ask by default, which means that anytime Flash tries to run, it's supposed to ask you, the browser is supposed to ask you if that's okay. Now, D2L interferes with that process, so it's not working for us right now, but we also don't see the question asking us if it's okay. And that's because D2L is in the way of that question, so to speak. So what we're going to do is for Flash, we're going to say always allow it on this particular URL. So it's always going to allow it on mcc.desiretolearn.com. So we can close that and it'll automatically save. We don't see any change here until we close it and then click record audio again. And now you can see that we have some new stuff happening. So the last setting we have to change is that right now, Flash doesn't realize that it can actually work on D2L, or we haven't told it that it's allowed to work on D2L. So right now, all we have to do is click allow and choose remember so that we don't have to do this every single time, and then click close. And now we should be able to record audio. If you don't like this box here, I'll go ahead and close that and hit record audio again. And now when you see the red button, you should be able to record. Make sure you read the additional recording settings because you do have the option to stop and play back your recording and re-record over a section that you didn't like. But for right now, we'll go ahead and start recording. It'll ask if we want to allow it to use the microphone and camera. I don't know why it says camera because it doesn't actually use that, but let's go ahead and click allow. So now you can see that it's recording, and as I'm talking, you can see some sound bars here. If I want to stop the recording, I can click stop. If I want to play back, I can hit play.
So now you can see that it's recording, and as I'm talking...
Okay, so a couple of things to be aware of. If you wanted to re-record over anything to the right of what we call the playhead, then you can hit record now by, well, first scrub your playhead to where you want to re-record over and then hit record. And now you should be able to record over that particular section. Now, when you're done, go ahead and hit stop. And you may or may not be able to see this add button, or at least you will see it, but it might not be clickable. And that might just be because it is kind of processing in the background. So for some reason it's not clickable, just give it a second. Now, another thing is if you play it back and you can't hear it, or you have students complain that they can't hear it, then make sure you go into your computer's audio and input settings to adjust the volume of your microphone. So once this is the way we want it, we can click add, and it's going to add that audio file to the Dropbox for them to download. Now, it's a good idea to type in here to come into the assignment submission folder and download the audio file to hear that verbal feedback. So tell them that note, but also make sure that you specifically indicate that they need to go to the submission folder, because if they go into the grades area and just look at their regular grades for all their assignments, it's not going to have this in that grades area. So if you just say download this file to listen, they're going to be in the grades area and think, what file are they talking about? And I've had this happen with students plenty of times, so I know that they're going to do this for you. So the first couple of times that you have an assignment and you use the audio recording, make sure that you write a note that specifically says go into the assignment submission folder. If you're in grades, you can't see this file I'm talking about, so make sure you're going over there. And once you do that a couple times, they usually get it and it's not a big deal. So I'll go ahead and hit update. Now, the only thing is people who have not turned anything in for that particular assignment, you can't put any feedback yet. So I'll go ahead and click in here. So one thing I find hard many times is that, Abe turned something in and I gave him feedback, but what if I send so-and-so over here and they didn't turn something in, but I need them to see that they didn't turn it in and that they've got a 0, and maybe I actually add a recording in there that speaks to them about that particular issue. So if you want to be able to grade both people who have submitted and people who haven't submitted, then click on Show Search Options, and then change this to say Show Everyone so that you can see everybody with submissions and everybody without submissions. Or you can, break that up yourself. And this is always confusing because you can't usually figure out what do you do from here, but you just click on this little magnifying glass. And once you do that, you should be able to see both the people who have submitted things and those who have not. And now I can go and evaluate those who have not and add a point system, or add points of typed feedback and or audio feedback.